cultivating self-compassion is a very important aspect of alleviating your anxiety symptoms. And so that's something that we talk about in Module 4. Self-compassion is incredibly important in lowering our fight, flight, or freeze. If you remember in Module 1, I spoke about our brain's reaction to shame. And in fact, something Dr. Shauna Shapiro loves to say is that our brain on shame doesn't work. And here's why. When we start to speak negatively to ourselves, our brain actually perceives that as a threat. And so it goes into the fight, flight, or freeze response that we spoke about again in Module 1. And so the amygdala gets fired up, it starts shooting these stress hormones and everything into our body because it feels like we're under attack. So it can't really tell the difference between somebody else coming in and saying negative things to you and yourself saying negative things to you. And so for many of us, we have feelings like, I should be able to just get over this. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be normal like everybody else? And so the more and more that we have these thoughts, the more and more we're actually exacerbating the problem. Okay. And so I know there's probably some people out there that are like, I don't have negative self-talk, or it's not a problem for me. And that's fine. But increasing our ability to be compassionate towards ourselves, being able to cultivate more self-compassion, even if you're someone who is fairly kind to yourself as it is, you're going to find wildly positive results from focusing on self-compassion and learning new techniques and tools to bring self-compassion into your life every single day. Okay. And I know that we spoke in the last video about one of the things that we can do when we journal at night is to say things that we are proud of ourselves for. And this is one thing that can actually help with self-compassion too. So if you haven't started doing that, I highly suggest it. And here's the thing. Self-compassion is, of course, easy to say, be kind to yourself. Speak to yourself like you would speak to your best friend. But actually implementing these things are so much more difficult because for whatever reason, we are our own worst enemy. And there's something that I live by and that I love to speak about is that in this entire world, there's one person, just one person that we are going to be with for our entire lives, from the moment we're born to the moment we die. And perhaps you've guessed it. That person is us, ourselves. The only person that will truly be with me from start to finish is myself. And so how is that relationship? That has to be the most important relationship that you foster and that you care about and that you actually take the time to ensure it is as best as it can be. Because when we are not kind to ourselves, that radiates out into everything else that happens in the world. And so the more time that we spend being kind to ourselves, the more that we will see a shift in the rest of our world. And right now, these days, it's even easier to start comparing ourselves to others, to think I'm not as good as this person or that person's better than me. I wish that I could have this. I wish that I could be that. And so really learning to love who we are in this moment and get comfortable with that is a huge step in alleviating our anxiety. Okay. And so something that's also really important to touch on here is that there has been a huge increase. And I mean, it's even just, there's a trend on social media where people are taking self-care. And they're showing, pictures of taking bubble baths or sitting with a glass of wine in the park or whatever it is. And self-care is incredibly important. Taking that time for yourself to give yourself space, to let your brain relax, to let your body relax, where you don't have to deal with anybody else. And I mean that in the kindest way, but just to really give yourself that space to just be, relax, and wind down. And self-care is very important, but it isn't the same as self-compassion. Self-compassion means looking towards yourself in a way that you are actively trying to make yourself feel better. And that's with kind words, kind gestures to yourself. And there's actually this really cool thing that happens when we become more compassionate towards ourselves. And it comes from our nurturing response as humans to our young ones and to others, where one of the most automatic responses that we have when somebody else is feeling down or feeling sad is that we come up to them and we say, hey, you know, like, how you doing? It's okay, right? We sort of rub their shoulders, we rub their back, and we don't just do this because, I don't know, it's a kind thing to do. We actually do this. It's a natural instinct because when we do that to somebody, it releases a chemical hormone in their body called oxytocin. And this helps to decrease the adrenaline and the cortisol that's surging through the body. And so that is why we do that to other people. And so one of the things that you can do is that when you are feeling down or when you are feeling anxious is that you can do that same thing. You can do it to yourself and you will actually have that same release. So this is just one of the many activities, exercises, pieces of information that we will go over in this module to help us be more self-compassionate and really use that in a way to help alleviate our anxiety. And that is a very, very, very brief synopsis of what we will go over in Module 4, Cultivating Self-Compassion. I will see you in the next video, Module 5. See you there.